go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
When I was asked to make a few remarks today, I have to admit that I was a bit hesitant because publicity is not my thing. But my friend Terry Marisho has always reminded me that I am the last surviving ex-minister of Maurice Bishop's cabinet, who the days before the fateful 19th of October came down on the side of Maurice by virtue of our resignations in support of Maurice. Indeed, I do recall that on October the 14th, when I met with Unison Whiteman, George Louison, Kenrick Radix, and my dear friend and parishioner Norris Bain, to assess the situation at that time. And we took that decision to resign in support of Maurice. I was given the responsibility of taking the scribbled resignations to the then Cabinet Secretary, Mrs. Marcella David, who I recall is quite distraught in receiving them. Full disclosure, I was given the nickname, I should say, as the Lollipop Minister of the Revolution. And who else would give me that name but one Maurice Bishop? We actually competed in cabinet for the worst possible handwriting. I'm not too sure we ever won that. Entertaining the views and of others, and inclusion of citizens willing to contribute to nation building, who may not necessarily be seen as politically aligned to the decision makers of the day, is something which we need to adopt, and which sadly the PRG was not totally tolerating of that. We cannot tiptoe around these issues. We have to be very honest about it. If we want to build a better Grenada, if we want to learn from the mistakes that were made.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb. We thank you for joining us, and as you're logging into the live stream, please do us a favor by sharing today's program. Do also like and subscribe to our YouTube page, as your engagement with our platform causes us to grow and reach, of course, a wider audience. Now, of course, last evening here in the Maryland area, and of course in the DMV area, many Grenadians turned out to participate in the independence celebrations marking Grenada's 51st anniversary of independence. Yes, we are beginning to have our own galas, as Dr. Mitchell would say, galas, fete. So it was a pleasure seeing so many Grenadians in the area who turned out. And I'm going to just play a quick highlight of how that went down last night, and then we'll get to the editorial. So that was a quick highlight reel there of Grenadians here in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Northern Virginia area. Of course, there is a small committee here that organizes events on behalf of the Grenadian community, and they are encouraging those of you who live in the area. There is a significant Grenadian contingent. There is a significant Grenadian diaspora here in the DMV area, as we call it. And so Miss Lizda Sawney and her team, as well as the team at the embassy under His Excellency Tali Francis, they will be reaching out to folks to volunteer for various embassy activities that are held on behalf of Grenada in Washington, D.C. in particular. They always need volunteers for various activities. And so they are appealing to you to come and support whatever activities that the embassy might be embarking on in the future. So please, this is a call to action for those of you in the Grenadian community here. And of course, viewers and listeners, we are now going to go on to the editorial of the week. And we're going to talk about the patriots and the patriots. Of course, the former is found in the land of empty platitudes and symbolism, while the latter is found in the vineyards of the tangible and doing the essential work of patriotism to make their country a better place. One such man who lived the ideals of patriotism was the late Lyden Ramdani, whose untimely passing last week left many in the national community saddened and sorrowful. Ramdani was one of the true champions of Grenada. He believed in the idea of Grenadianism and was genuinely committed to it. During his tenure as a public servant minister of tourism during the Grenada Revolution, Ramdani was at the forefront of attracting tourism to Grenada at a time when the country's reputation was taking an imperialist beating abroad at the hands of those who attempted to convince visitors that Grenada was not a safe place to visit. Now, Ramdani, during his tenure as Grenada's tourism minister, was very passionate about his work, and for him, it was not about ideology, but about Grenada. Ramdani, therefore, had a keen sense of Grenada's place in the Caribbean and the world. His entrepreneurial background meant that many options were available to him in the private sector, but nonetheless still chose to serve his country at a national level. His contribution to Grenada stemmed from his conviction that getting involved in the country's development was the best response to the challenges faced by the society at the time. In the words of Didacus Jules, quote, "In those momentous years of the revolution, when hope burned bright and the horizons of possibility seemed infinite, Leiden stood at the crossroads of government and private enterprise, a veritable bridge navigating the imperatives of social equity and individual entrepreneurship, helping to define and exemplify how private businesses can exercise social responsibility and creating space within which local businesses can prosper as a productive sector, adding value rather than simply being a predatory distributive sector," unquote. In a myriad of other ways, his calm and deliberate presence embodied the best ideals of a quintessential Grenadian patriot. The Bubb Report, therefore, extends its deepest sympathies to the immediate and extended family, as well as to the family of L.L. Ramdani and Company Limited on his passing. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. Viewers and listeners, this is the Bubb Report. We'll be back for the first segment of the program. Please stand by.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, if you're just joining us, do us a favor by liking and sharing this week's live stream. And of course, those of you over on YouTube, and currently our count on YouTube is 141 viewers. All of you 141 viewers who are there, please do us a favor by liking this week's live stream so others can get an opportunity to watch the program as well. Now, in March of 2024, the Public Workers Union passed a resolution, that is, in one of its executive meetings to change the individual membership contributions to $20 or 1% of basic salary, or whichever is greater. Now, before the membership increase, those whose salaries were capped at $1,500 paid $15, whereas those whose salaries were between $1,501 and $2,500 paid $20, with the highest dues being paid by those earning $2,501 and above. Now, the union dues increase has also become the subject of the upcoming PWU internal election, with one of the contenders, Mr. Fimber Thomas, an Orlando Romaine endorsed candidate, promising to reverse this increase if he and his slate are given the nod by the membership of the union. This increase, however, has garnered the attention of Grenada's Secretary to the Cabinet, Ms. Carvel-Lett, who in November of 2024 demanded that the union provide an explanation as to the basis for the increase. Lett, in correspondence to the union, implied that no consultations were held with the rank and file of the membership. Of course, many of those members work with the Government of Grenada, informing them of this increase. The union disagreed. This issue all came to a head last week when the Public Workers Union raised alarm bells concerning the impact that a lack of union dues are having on the proper functioning of the organization. However, in a press release issued by the Government of Grenada on Friday, February 21st, 2025, LET said, quote, "The Government of Grenada has expressed its commitment to honoring the union's request and ensuring that the revised salary deductions are implemented. As part of the implementation process, all relevant government departments have been notified, and members are encouraged to acknowledge receipt by signing, in parentheses, yes or no, and returning the circular to the Cabinet Office no later than the 24th of February 2025 to facilitate the deductions and payments by month end February 2025. The correspondence goes on to say, quote, "For further inquiries, members are encouraged to contact the Cabinet Office," unquote. The Bubb report also contacted Labour Minister Senator Claudette Joseph, who directed us to speak to the Office of the Prime Minister on this matter. And here to make sense of this issue are Mr. Brian Grimes, the current president of the Public Workers Union, as well as Senator Andre Lewis, who is the president of the Grenada Trades Union Council, as well as the Labour representative in the upper house of Grenada's parliament. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Bubb Report.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear
Senator
me?
Lewis, yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Good morning.
Mr. Grimes.
Sure. Good morning.
Yes, very well. It's good having you both. But Grimes, Mr. Grimes, I do want to start with the genesis and justification behind union dues increase. Of course, as a member of my union here, the faculty union, as well as a former member of the Technical and Allied Workers Union in Grenada, I do remember having to pay union dues. Now, let us talk about the genesis and justification behind this specific union dues increase that got the attention of the Secretary to the Cabinet, who incidentally is also a former member of the Public Workers Union.
Yes.
Mr.
So,
Grimes.
good morning again to your listeners, your viewers, to yourself, Dr. Bubb, and obviously to my fellow panelists, the esteemed Comrade Andrew Lewis. I'm very happy to be on. But the first thing I want to do before I get into your question is to really applaud the leadership of Mr. Andre Lewis, Comrade Andre Lewis, in this whole matter, because the Grenada Public Workers Union, based on his intervention, at no point felt isolated in this matter. It is really was an unprovoked, unprecedented attack on our institution, but the quintessential quality of the trade union movement is solidarity. And I just want to publicly thank Mr. Andre Lewis in terms of using his office as the head of the Caribbean Congress of Labour and the head of the Grenada Trade Union Council in intervening on this matter, which is an ongoing matter as we speak. So yes, to your question about the dues increase, our dues have been the same for well over 30 years, 30-something years, right? A long, long time. One can understand. Let me just put it in context. The last 6 years or so, within the framework of negotiations with government, public officers would have seen at minimum a 25% increase. I just give you the straight figures, not compounded. So 444 and 445 respectively, last 6 years. Now, again, I'm saying in the last 30 years, our dues have not moved. In recent time, we have seen that our organization, along with other trade unions in the country, ensured through advocacy, through legal intervention, that workers within the public service are assured, established workers are assured of a pension. That intervention caused the state to have to pay at least $75 million in back pay, and going forward in perpetuity have to pay pensions to establish public officers. Good. This is significant. Now, we have ensured that public officers can rest easy, whether from permanent secretary go down to the lowest level of worker who are established, so that they can rest easy when the time for retirement comes. Now, I'm speaking about the fact that the state classified this as the biggest movement of cash from one party to the next, probably in the history of the country. The union was central in that. Guess what happened? The only thing the union got back from that, one worker came and said, look, $500 in an envelope to our institution to go to our coffers. Now, the greater point I'm making here is that we are doing tremendous work for our membership, but we need to change the financial model. We have over 10 workers at the Grenada Public Workers Union, correct? And they have to get increases matched with what happens within the public service. You have to understand that everything is going up. Stationery is going up. Good toiletries are going up. We have to ensure that the services that we provide to our members are optimal and at the highest level. So because of that, we engaged, right, at our AGM, the highest decision-making body. Article 8 of the PW Constitution speaks to that with our members, fully queried, right? And we had a strong, robust discussion about this. The treasurer, the whole board put forward the numbers to the members. In fact, every year we do an audit by a professional firm. Panelco Foster is of recent vintage. With that, the numbers were put forward to the workers, and it was an opportune time. A member came forward with a resolution which was brought before us in a timely fashion before the AGM, placed in the booklet, and we had discussions, and the members voted practically unanimously based on all the arguments and the facts and the data put forward to ensure that our 94-year-old institution does not limp to 100, but goes forward on its feet very strong in the name of the continuation of the protection of public officers and statutory bodies in this country.
Let me bring in Comrade Lewis here. I still call him Comrade Lewis because, of course, you were the deputy, you were the general secretary of TAO when I was in the union. But Mr. Lewis, in respect of this issue, in respect of the executive arm of government, the secretary to the executive arm of government, a constitutional position, demanding a consultation, demanding to know the basis upon which the union arrived at the decision to engage in the business of fee hikes. Now, I'm aware that also TAO represents workers that are employed with the Government of Grenada. Did you also have to confront with this issue? Or is this the first time you're seeing this?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bubb, Comrade Bubb, and my dear Comrade Grimes. Permit me, although you did that already, Dr. Bubb, but let me just start by extending sympathy to the families of the late Robert Robbie Robinson, a stalwart in the labor movement. We extend our deepest condolences to the family, his wife and Randall and all the other surviving members, and to also echo your sentiment and sympathies to the family of the late Lyden Ramdani, one who contributed tremendously to the development of Grenada, and who just didn't, he walked the walk, right? In other words, during the period of the Grenada Revolution, as he clearly has identified himself, when he could have taken the quote unquote, probably the easy way out, he actually served practically in the Government of Grenada, recognizing the importance of what the revolution stood for, trying to bring betterment for Grenada. And for this, for the both colleagues, we extend our deepest sympathies and salute you for your contributions that you all have made. Now, to the issue that you have raised, this is the very first time that I've come across like a matter like this. I can tell you, in the Caribbean, it has sent shockwaves, because for us, we need to put this thing in proper perspective. I know that the signature came from the CABSEC, but the CABSEC is representing the government. And the government as an employer, and the government has a philosophical position on unions. And this has the implications of creating a dangerous precedent that can lead to further industrial unrest, because trade unions must not and will not accept these interferences into our internal affairs. I have seen that what came out from the government, and I'm going to keep saying the government, what came from the government in terms of the latest press release, took on the role of public relations officer of the Grenada Public Workers Union and asking members of the union to contact the government if they need any clarity on issues on a union matter, speaks about the direct interference in the internal operations of a bona fide and legitimate organization, an organization that has its founding in the Grenada Constitution, because Section 11 of the Constitution recognizes the right of each individual to belong to organizations and groupings, and in particular trade unions. I'm just paraphrasing here. And this is not a case where Jews were not taken out before. The union Jews of the Public Workers Union, members of that bargaining unit, has always been taken out. And the question that must arise is why now? And because my information is that the last Jews that the Public Workers Union had received was in November of 2024. Although the new structure was supposed to take effect from January 2025. So it begs into question, what is the objective with the particular timing now of this engagement, this involvement, this interference in the internal affairs of the union? And we have to guard this. Could you imagine, that the members of the public or the trade union seeking to get information or question other organizations when they took the decisions based on the Constitution? So it is a dangerous precedent.
Well, could you imagine if Dr. Mitchell, former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, did that, what the current government would be saying?
Well, I know. And you see, Mr. Lailan Ramdani, which stood out to me because it was at the stadium when he made that address, and you brought it back and it came to me. Mm-hmm. In his engagement with the population on February 7th, I think it was 2023, 2023. I think it's 24, whatever year it was, spoke about the need for tolerance and the need to have engagement with people with different views or differences on a national macro level. What we can't see an employer. How does an employer, most of the government, and let's not single out the CABSEC. Yes, it came from a pen, but the CABSEC must be reflecting the mindset of the administration. The CABSEC cannot and will not, with a government letterhead and the position that is held at that office, reflect a personal position. Even after, I'm sure, the PM would have intervened, even if he knew about it before. Let me make this point. But after the General Secretary of the Caribbean Congress of Labour, Comrade Michael Anaset, and myself as President of the Caribbean Congress of Labour, engaged directly in a discussion in Barbados during the heads of government meeting. And the assurance was given that this matter was resolved. And therefore, it was very disconcerting to have seen their release that came out the day after, asking members to petition, a petition from the government to determine whether yes or no. It is one thing to say, yes, I have seen a correspondence that you sent out. But it's another thing to ask yes or no. This is a vote, and this is a petition similar to what was done before, petition to bring the union to its knees, right? Engaging in salary negotiations, which today workers have turned around and recognized that we ought to have got more. The point I'm making here, Dr. Bob, I want to use this opportunity to appeal to our members, all workers, right across the board, that we must support whichever political party we want, and that's okay. But when it comes to bread and butter issues, because without the finances, the organization, the unions will not be able to deliver the quality and the level of services that are required. We have to go to the courts. We were lucky, and hats off to the firms that did not charge us to take the pension matter to court. But it costs a lot. The Technical and Allied Workers Union had to spend close to $100,000 to address the issue of the right of workers to take matters to court that the Privy Council ruled against. And we know that it costs a lot. There are professional services that need to be rendered to our members, and our members deserve the best service that is possible. And therefore, we have to find the resources to provide those services. So I want to call on all of us to ensure that we do not make this based on party politics. But even if we support a political party that farms the administration, we must take what we call a bread and butter industrial relations approach to this. And I found it very instructive. I found it very instructive that the Minister for Labor referred you to the Office of the Prime Minister.
Yeah. When was the last increase for the union dues increase for TAU?
Well, our structure is 1.5% of your salary, or $15, whichever is greater. Because we recognize that rather than every 5 years, every 10 years, you may have to go back to members, that you apply a percentage. You apply a percentage so that people pay according to their income. And that's what we have been doing. So that our structure is 1.5% of your basic salary, or $15, whichever is greater.
So you've not, in this period, since the ascension of this administration into public service, you've not had an increase. And I'm sure, is this an issue that
no, we
you've
have had an increase because every time there is an increase
so
in
you've
salary,
had an increase.
no, every time every time there's an increase in salary, there will be an increase in the amount to be deducted, because there is a formula of 1.5% of your basic salary. So let us say, for instance, if you are making, let us say, $2,000, and I'm going to use some figures for easy conversation. If you're making $2,000, 1.5% would be $30. Yes? If your salary moved from $2,000 to $4,000, then it will now be $60, 1.5% of your salary. Because you pay according to your income. Basic salary. It is not on, I want to repeat, it is not on overtime, it is not on allowances. And you know why we had to do that too, Dr. Bob? As part of the employer's strategy to try to weaken TAU in particular over the many years. Our dues remain unchanged. I mean, people are paying what, $5 for years, $2.50 for years. We had what we call a retroactive levy on outstanding negotiations, and companies use that against us to indicate that we were holding back on negotiations, trying to force workers to agree because we wanted the retroactive to build up to get. And we have taken away this, right? So we have taken away that. So all that workers pay is a 1.5% on their dues.
So you would, for these increases, the cabinet secretary never wrote to TAU.
No, they don't have to, because they know what the structure of our dues are. They know what the structure of our dues are, and I will hate to believe, or hate to even contemplate, any employer doing this. I mean, you see, Dr. Bob, the question must arise: So why? Because that can't make sense. To me, it can't make sense, right? To me, it can't make sense. But those who are behind it may have a bigger picture that they are looking at, right? And we must look at the horizon and the storm clouds and the dark clouds and the environment that we are operating under, right? Because what this may very well do, and I hope it is not done because we'll have to respond to it very, very firmly, that for any employer in any of the other unions to seek to get involved in the internal affairs of the organization. And more so, we know that finance cripples organizations, especially service organizations. Don't forget about the embargo against Cuba. Don't forget that the weapon that countries use and those who want to try to cripple economies is that of financial support and assistance. Yes? So don't forget that. So, I mean, it begs into question. It begs into question. What is the game? What is the end game? What is the end game? What is the immediate objective of this administration? Because I keep repeating, the CABSEC is a functionary of the administration, and the CABSEC will not. I just can't understand it. So we're using this opportunity to make this call, and I'm doing this. I know I'm here as the president of the Trades Union Council, but I'm also at the moment putting on my hat as president of the Caribbean Congress of Labor, because we have put out a press release. We have put out a press release condemning the government and calling for them to immediately rectify the matter. And I'll tell you something, Dr. Bob, just permit me, for you and the listeners. Before we engage in Barbados, we were in the process of putting out a very strong letter. But we pulled back on the letter, and we told the PM, look, we are going to pull back on the letter once you give that commitment to intervene, right? Because, what is to be done? And therefore, we did not. But after the engagement, and as I said, the release from the government, what is called a press release for the Public Workers Union. I don't know where the state or the CABSEC or anyone gets the authority to put out a press release for the union. Once that went out, and it still makes a conditionality as part of the process, because he says as part of the process of implementing the new structure, this is what is required. And what is required is for you to say yes or no, for you to tell us whether to do it or not. Because the question would arise, what if they are able to get, based on those who respond, a number of them to say no? Are you following me?
That's the question I have for Mr. Grimes as well, and I'm going to bring him back here because go ahead, Andre, finish your train of thought, and we will pick up on this.
In other words, so that is why we immediately, that's why the Caribbean Congress of Labor immediately then sent out that press release through the region, so that there can be the direct intervention again to ensure that this matter is resolved and to make the necessary deductions. As a matter of fact, if the deductions were made and the holding of the union Jews were deducted as far as I learned, right? Withholding of the union Jews, as I said in another space, had it been in the agricultural sector, we would have been speaking about pretty larceny. You can't take people's property that is designed for someone else and hold it. The law says that section 43(4) of the Employment Labor Relations Act, that union dues and service contribution deducted shall be submitted or remitted within 15 days. Within 15 days, that's what the law says. So why is the state, why are they violating the laws?
Yes, Mr. Graham. So let us on background here. Many viewers in the comments seem to suggest, at least some of them are, I don't know if they're union members, some of them are anonymous contributors, but it talk about the genesis. And when I say the genesis here, yes, you gave on background the fact that, there were not fee increases for a long time, and that this was meant to necessitate the current conditions. But can you talk to us about the process by which the union came to that conclusion that a fee increase was needed in respect of consultations with the rank and file of the union? When I say process here, that's what I'm speaking to. Consultation with rank and file members of the union. What did that look like in this process?
Right. So thanks for the question, Dr. Bubb. So as I stated earlier, in terms of the necessity for the fee increases based on the mortgage, based on the fact that we have to ensure that our staff, our hardworking staff, is well paid and everything, this initiative, this resolution came about. Right, that background is well understood by the members generally, and specifically those who attended the AGM. So what it is really,
was that not wanting to, and I just want to get again to put more context in this. That AGM was held when?
The 28th of March, 2024.
The 28th of March, and that was a meeting where all members obviously, yes, came together. All right, go ahead, sir.
Yes. So the Article 8 of our Constitution, we are not a fly-by-night organization, Dr. Bubb. As I stated, we are 94 years old. So we have bylaws or a constitution that guides our activities or operations, right? And it clearly states within our constitution, and as Comrade Andre Lewis referred to, our organization is specifically referred to in the Grenada Constitution under 83:15, and basically the powers of the trade union is also spoken to in section 11 of the Grenada Constitution. Now, specific to the PW Constitution, Article 8 states clearly and categorically that the annual general meeting, the AGM, is the highest decision-making body of the union. Right, and it is there all the issues are discussed around labor, around finances, around our sustainability, and the whole process is we ensured that there was advertisements. There is a layout in terms of the Constitution, the PW Constitution, when this is advertised in what medium, newspaper, social media, all these methods, our shop steward arm, so forth. They will ensure that the members are aware, emails, all mediums possible. So all parties were aware that we are having the AGM. And in Article 7 of the PW Constitution, it speaks to what is a quorum. You are an educator, sir, so you must know if there are 10,000 members in your organization, you more than likely would not expect all 10,000 to show up at that AGM, right? So with our constitution under Article 7, a quorum is 40 members. We had way more than that because we did it in a blended fashion in terms of 21st century operations, which is also enshrined in our constitution. Yes, so there was more than 40 at our AGM. And we had PKF there, that's the auditor, on display, the numbers. Members could ask questions in terms of our finances and so forth, which is customary with trade unions. Comrade Lewis could refer to that also. So members saw all what was going on in the books, and a resolution was brought forward. Not even that time on the day, it was brought forward before by a member. And it was discussed at length, a very strong and rich discussion in terms of how can we better our services? How can we ensure that we stick around to be 100 years? We are 94 now, based on what is going on with our finances. And ultimately, there was practically a unanimous vote to change the due structure, which I want to iterate here was outdated. So the current due structure that we have is on par or even less to some degree than what is the market rate for the other major trade unions, I'm talking about the TAWUs, the GUTs, and so forth. But it's basically on par, right? The resolution had an implementation date of more than 9 months after, which is January of 2025, right? So the word got out, our shop stewards sent the word out to our members, and we officially informed via email to all our members in October of 2024. And we also informed the authorities, right, in November of 2024 via correspondence and emails. And when I say authorities, the Office of the Cabinet, the Ministry of Finance, all the ministries and the finance officers, so they were aware what they had to do for January of 2025. And as is expected, the dues actually were deducted because we had everything, we did our due diligence and everything was in place. However, what came about, because we have to budget, we have to plan. I asked the accounts clerk, look, the dues are supposed to come in. Tell us what the dues are so we can budget for the year 2025. The response was he reached out to finance and they have not submitted it as yet. So I'm thinking that's basically for the new year, right? And you know, the things happen within the public service. Sometimes things can be a bit slow. So that was understood. But and that was in January, when the 17th of February came, the administrative officer said, Brother Grimes, there is a correspondence from the office of the cabinet secretary that you may be interested in, right? And when I read it, my brother, I was appalled. Everyone else in the office who read it was taken aback. People were shocked. I mean, in colloquial terms. I shared it obviously with my comrade in TUC in terms of not the actual letter, but the essence of the correspondence, and he too was taken aback. Everybody in the labor movement, when this information was shared, including our secretariat, our staff, was taken aback by this. So we immediately responded to the cabinet secretary's office to really, without any sort of doubt or ambiguity, to speak about the sovereignty of the Grenada Public Workers Union in terms of its internal affairs and the integrity of all our processes at our 94-year-old organization. Yeah. Further discovery would have led me to understand, in terms of interrogating the staff about the dues, that the last time the dues were paid was in November. So literally, our payments for salaries and our operations was basically in jeopardy. It was in jeopardy, right? And so possibly the staff could not have gotten paid based on the accounts that we have, because you must understand the union dues are the lifeblood of any trade union. Despite the other things that we do, little rentals of the conference room and so forth, union dues are the primary income for our trade union. Yes, so basically we looked at this as an attempt to cripple the operations of the Grenada Public Workers Union, and we took it very, very seriously. I contacted our legal counsel. Apart from that, we wrote, the union wrote rather, to Mike Sylvester, Mr. Mike Sylvester. He is the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance. We also wrote to the Honorable Dennis Cornwall, the Minister of Finance, copied the Prime Minister, copied the Attorney General, Honorable Claudette Joseph, and we also wrote officially to the Trade Union Council, speaking about the debacle that was in motion with this move from the Office of the Cabinet Secretary. I want to go further to agree with Comrade Lewis on this matter, and I want to quote Section 68 of the Grenada Constitution, which I have before me, and it says, "There shall be a secretary to cabinet whose office shall be a public office." And it goes on to say, "The secretary to the cabinet who shall have charge of the cabinet office shall be responsible in accordance with such instructions as may be given to him by the Prime Minister for arranging the business for and keeping the minutes of the cabinet, and for conveying the decisions of the cabinet to the appropriate person or authority, and shall have such other functions as the Prime Minister may direct. So we do not want to personalize this. Obviously, if it comes from the office of the Cabinet Secretary, we have to interpret this as being a Cabinet decision, which we can say without any hesitation, this is an unprovoked and unprecedented attack on our institution in an attempt to bust our organization. We cannot view it or interpret it in any other way, right? And so I am happy, as I reported in the opening, Comrade Andrew Lewis intervened to the best of his ability to this point to involve the Caribbean Congress of Labor, right? The Caribbean Congress of Labor, where fortunately or providentially, there was the CARICOM heads and the CCL was there, and they got an opportunity to interact directly with the Prime Minister of our country, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, to speak to this. And based on the secondary information I received, it was stated that this matter would be put to bed and we will receive our funds. So during that day, Friday, I think that was the 21st, Friday of last week, we received part of the dues. Part of the dues would be January and part of February. December is still unpaid as we speak here right now. And what compounded this matter, after what I thought was good news and solid news that the Prime Minister seemed to have distanced himself from this, and it may have been some sort of mix-up, we subsequently saw a press release coming from the office of the Cabinet Secretary speaking to a poll again, right? So there is conditionality to the.
So it seems as though it would be conditioned on the increase would be conditioned on whether or not the members agree or disagree. Now, is that the role of the Cabinet Secretary to make that determination?
Well, I just categorically spoke to you on what the role of the CABSEC is. This is total infringement. This is an attack on the Grenada Public Workers Union, and by extension, an attack on the trade union movement in Grenada and the region on a whole. So as we speak, people within the region have their eyes on this matter, not just CCL, the Caribbean Public Service Association, for which our organization is a part, is having keen eyes on this particular development. Hopefully it can end peacefully, but it has the potential to become very explosive and a very confrontational issue.
Well, we like to say here on the Bubb Report, and we have a lot of comments. Unfortunately, we do have to get to the next segment. We really have to get to the next segment. I usually take comments, but I also want to respect people's time. I'll go over to you, Senator Lewis, for some closing comments as we wrap up this segment, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And just want to use that opportunity to call on all workers in Grenada, the Caribbean region, and over the world to continue to recognize the importance of trade unions and to continue to, especially in this period where we have big business apparently running the world most powerful economy, the Elon Musk of this world. And these things have a way of trickling down in the Caribbean region. And the unions are now needed more so than ever, as has been recognized in the United States, where people have just been sent home, fired, dismissed left, right, and center. And any employer, and especially the government, that seeks to deny trade unions their finances could be interpreted as an attempt to weaken the movement and to destroy the movement. And I am seeing this beyond just the Cabinet Secretary, because it is a function of the government. And I mean, it is, how does a government ask a trade union, a reputable trade union, a trade union that is almost 100 years old, that has its own internal constitution and operations, to give them, the government, a report of the audit annual general meeting of 2024, the attendance register? You know, you are now so you want to know who attended the meeting? What if these are now designed to take action against workers who are seen as being close to the union? Because some employers would like to do that. And then evidence of consultation held. I mean, this is unheard of. I know Grenada is known for a lot of firsts. We have had the first revolution in an English-speaking Caribbean. right? We have just had a number of firsts, but this one is a first that the labor movement does not want to be identified with. And the sooner that matter is resolved and put to bed, put to rest with the necessary announcements from the government that the authority of the Public Workers Union is being respected and this matter has been resolved. Whatever explanation that they want to give for what took place, it will be better for all of us because it has now caused us in Grenada and the region to be examined more closely, the landscape, the industrial relations landscape that is unfolding in Grenada. And I find it very interesting, very instructive that the Minister for Labour didn't refer you to the Cabinet Secretary. And that's what I'm telling my comrades. I don't know why we are singling on the Cabinet Secretary, but you're referred to the Office of the Prime Minister. Because that is the office that is responsible for the CABSEC. I raise that case there and to wish everyone all the very best. And to you, Dr. Bubb, thank you for this platform as we continue in the service of the working class people.
Yes. And of course, Mr. Grimes, this might be your last time here in your capacity as president of the Public Workers Union. Of course, you've never shied away from coming on this program. You know, we have an election coming up. Are you going to use this opportunity to endorse any of the candidates? Or is that not a best practice in the union? I mean, I'm seeing people endorsing Orlando Romain, the public relations officer of the NDC, endorsing one of the members. I saw another commentator from the NNP endorsing another member. And I'm wondering what's that about? How have we come to the place where trade unionism in Grenada is now an NNP versus NDC thing? In my days in the union, as a member of TAU, that was never a thing. It was never the case.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I honestly, as
Dr. Bubb, I'm glad you made that point.
As someone who is a trade unionist, I am a trade unionist in my faculty union here in the state of Maryland, and we just passed the state. There is a resolution that's going to the state to enshrine trade unionism in the constitution of the state, owing to what Washington is trying to do, bus unions. I've never seen this, where political organizations, surrogates for political organizations, are endorsing candidates in a trade union election. Mr. Lewis, go ahead. You wanted to add something.
No, I wanted to say, no, it is good that you made that observation because you have been in the trenches with us in TAU, with the many battles that we had over the years that you were there. And more than that, you were there when there were heated national battles with the labor movement, including battles against the state, battles against the government as an employer. And we have not seen that happen. And I'm glad you mentioned that, right? Given your wealth of experience, I mean, we have been on the ground, so we know. But from someone as a journalist with you, thanks for bringing that out.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Grimes, go ahead, sir.
Yes. So thanks for that. You know, I'm always extremely elated to be on your program. I'm a fan of your program. I enjoy the discourse, and after my segment is over, I want to hear what the other panelists have to say on the respective topics. So you brought up PW elections. I did not make it a secret in terms of who I wish my successor to be, and that is Sister Daisy Hazard, who is an exemplary member of our executive and who has more than enough talent to be and capacity to lead this, you know, venerable organization. You know, it's some serious things happening out here, Dr. Bubb, because what I have seen is that there are people, and I enjoy the democracy. I enjoy challenges. I enjoy the election process and the participation. That bodes well for our organization, for the PWU. But then when you have individuals who are contesting, they don't come to AGMs, they don't come to May Day, they don't attend social events, any social gathering, nothing union, but then you want to go straight to the top at the helm. And then your programmatic platform is on reducing the dues, which essentially will shorten the life of the union. It is dangerous. So I had to endorse Daisy's team, which I believe I worked with all the actors and all the people involved, and they are fantastic, high integrity people, and they will protect the interests of the union going forward. What we are seeing here in Grenada is a corporatization of governance, in my humble view, where based on what I'm seeing, I can only speak to the evidence before me, that there is an attack on the institution of union, which basically is an attack on the working class. And I don't want to politicize things, because my job and my record would show as I exit the stage that irrespective of which political party is in government, I just ensure that I do the work of the union, represent the workers' interests to the best of my ability, and ensure that bread and butter issues and development of the workers is at the forefront, not green or yellow. Yeah. So these are very, very interesting times.
Or orange.
Yeah. Orange. Yes. I see George Wom, my good friend George Wom, has pegged me as a potential candidate on the orange team. You know, but it is what it is. A lot of things are being said, but I have felt honored to have represented workers at the highest level and to have worked along with comrades like Andre Lewis. And it's time for me to exit. And hopefully I am confident in the collective intelligence of the public service that they would make the right decision and they would be on the right side of history and understand what is going on here. There are efforts by some influencers to bring derision within the ranks of the Grenada Public Workers Union and turn the members against the leadership of the union. But the public officers, they are intelligent. We have seen the stages and we are the apex of it right now. But I think the eyes have opened to what is afoot and the right decisions will be made. So again, thank you for the platform, and to your viewers and listeners, I hope that you enjoy the rest of the program and have a great Sunday. Thanks again.
Gentlemen, thank you again for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Again, viewers and listeners, we do apologize for not taking a lot of your comments, but we do have to get to the next segment. This is a very packed show today, so I hope you can understand. So what we're going to do now is to take a quick break and come back for a quick conversation with journalist Calistra Farrier before we get into a conversation on parliamentary protocol, privacy, and the public interest in the context of the Grenada Parliament. So we will be standing by for that conversation. So please stand by.
The area of concern is located in a part of St. Vincent called Richmond in the North Leeward constituency. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has granted approval to the St. Lucian-based RG group of companies to operate a stone quarry in the area, with preparation work starting last week at the site. In an interview with Vincentian media outlet Eyewitness News, Managing Director of RG Group, Rayneau Construction, outlined the details of the project, which will see the area in question being turned into a mining site for aggregate for the next 30 years. According to Gajada, the company performed all checks and balances to attain approval for the project.
And we have permission from the government of St. Vincent. We have planning approval. We submitted all the drawings that was requested and all the necessary assessments that they required for the approvals. We got every single approval in writing, so that only happened last week. The final approval actually only happened last week, Friday. So we decided we would have come in and started the operation right away.
But farmers who have farmlands in the same area where the quarry is being set up, however, claim that they only found out about the project when heavy machinery appeared on the land to clear pathways to get it underway. They are crying foul that the government had no prior consultation with them about the project, which directly affects them. Two farmers who were also interviewed by Eyewitness News expressed concern about what the project would mean for their livelihoods. According to them, the same lands which the RG Group has been granted approval to mine is being listed to farmers by the Vincentian government to carry out farming over the past 2 decades.
We occupy a 5-acre plot there, and we've done that for over 20 years. And I've been farming there for 12 to 15 years on that plot itself. My issue with what is happening right now is that there was no consultation, absolutely no consultation. I've heard in circles that there were consultations in 2018 and some other dates. I don't know about those. And even if those had happened, 2022 is a different era.
No one said anything to me. Nobody came to me already. So we're all hearing and seeing things going on.
What I know is that after the fact, again, some officers from the Ministry of Agriculture went there yesterday conducting assessment on the plants and the crops and so on that are on the farm.
But you said some of your cocoa
already destroyed.
Already destroyed.
So you can't assess what has been destroyed. And the point I'm making, Kenton, is that you don't go and do an assessment after the project has started. It doesn't make sense.
Further comment was sought from the RG Group's managing director, but this proved unsuccessful. Meanwhile, we await the outcome of Thursday's discussion held with the farmers and others affected.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, the relationship between Grenada and the St. Lucia-based firm Construction and Industrial Equipment Limited commenced in May of 2022 when the former NNP administration announced that the company won the bid to stabilize the Molyneux land slippage, which has incurred several cost overruns and missed deadlines for an official reopening. Extensive deterioration of the Molyneux main road in St. George led to its closure since December 2019, resulting in traffic being routed that is, through the village of Mount Morris. Now that the Molyneux road has been rehabilitated and the land slippage almost abated, Construction and Industrial Equipment Limited seem to have turned to other construction ventures in Grenada. Now, 2 Sundays ago, the Bubb Report spoke with a resident from Woodford St. who raised alarm bells about the company's unauthorized construction of a concrete batching plant, which appears to be violating local physical planning regulations. It is also being undertaken without consulting the surrounding, mostly farming community. In fact, the Member of Parliament for the area, Karine James MP, indicated that she was not aware of the scope and nature of what was being erected in this pristine community of Woodford and St. John, whose lands have been historically used for agricultural cultivation. We also understand that the Physical Planning Unit has served more than one enforcement notice to the company, but residents say Rayneau Construction continues their work, ignoring the Physical Planning Unit's mandate. Now, while Rayneau continues to ignore enforcement notices, the Physical Planning Unit has in recent time been showing up its demolition mantle against other Grenadians who have also been violating Physical Planning Unit regulations, like the recent unauthorized construction down at Grandance Beach. So we ask, is there a double standard here? Now, before coming to Grenada, Rayneau Construction signed an agreement with the Government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in April of 2021 for the company to operate a stone quarry in the North Leeward area of Richmond for the next 30 years. The Richmond area is important for Vincentians since many locals go down to the streams to fish and engage in other recreational activity. And of course, over in Grenada, colleague journalist and host of The Narrative, Calistra Farrier, has been following this story and joins us to discuss this ongoing issue. And Calistra, first and foremost, thank you for being patient with us and welcome again. I tip my hat to you as the Dean of Media, the Dean of Journalism in Grenada. You are the Dean, Madam, okay? So welcome to the Bubb Report for this very important conversation.
Thank you for having me on the program. When the show started, and good morning to your viewers and listeners, wherever they may be, I saw that you have Dr. Mitchell and myself as a meme in your introduction. Don't go there.
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
The Rayneau Construction Group, and that outfit has a few names, a few companies that operates. You mentioned one Construction and Industrial Limited. They actually just won a bid for the refurbishment of the St. David Secondary School in St. David. They were the highest bid. Their bid was just almost $41 million, but somehow they were able to win in this open bid that the government had. There were bids of like 29 million, 32 million, and 232 million bid, 29 and 40. And strangely, Rayneau got the nod to do that project, which may help in shedding light and answering that question that you asked about just how much of a red carpet is being rolled out by those who need to be protecting the business of the state and the business of the people that Rayneau is enjoying. You pretty much covered a lot of what is in your intro, a lot of what is going on with Rayneau here in Grenada. What I can tell you for a fact is that every development, every construction that they have done so far, Kellan, is by the laws of Grenada illegal. The cement batching plant is definitely illegal. They are continuing to work on it. Even an enforcement notice was served on June 10th to 12th last year. It was not until 6 months later in November that Rayneau bothered to submit drawings for the batching plant. By then, it was almost complete. My site visit there a few weeks ago showed that it's, I consulted with people who know about these things to look at the videos that I had, and it's completed. So they continue to work up until 2 or 3 days ago, even as they were being served an enforcement notice for another illegal development. They were working on the cement batching plant. And it continues. What planning says is that they have asked them to submit a scope. So from November to now, that scope document has not been submitted. As far as I know, based on what I'm looking into, the scope document requires them to give details of what the activities that they're going to be conducting and performing on the site will be, so that planning can make a determination as to whether or not they must now ask them to do an environmental and social impact assessment at ESIA. There are times when one can ask for a scope document to determine whether or not an ESIA or an EIA is really necessary. But I am told by those who know and have been in the field for a while, because I've spoken to several experts on this, that in the case of a cement batching plant and the quarry, which is what is going on the Woodford site, that an ESIA is a given, so that this space that Rayneau is being given, while they merrily continue to complete the project, is a step that was not necessary, that they needed to be ordered to cease all work and present the necessary studies that will tell the planning authority what sort of impact the project will have on the area. And the area, mind you, Kellan, is a very sensitive area. It's a lot of arable lands. Farmers are there too. The St. Vincent story is quite similar.
It's very similar, yes.
Yeah, they haven't cut down farmers' cultivation and they're producing cocoa trees. They haven't done that at Woodford. But what has happened to the farmers there is excavation that Rayneau has done is being linked to the collapse of a road that farmers use to get to their farms. The farmers actually met about 2 weeks ago with the representative for the area, Ms. Kiri James. Of course, she continues to say she has no idea about what is going on, which in itself is a problem because she is the MP. But she did say to people who brought the matter to her that it's private land and that they're free to do what they want. I believe that the Minister of the Environment, and ironically, she's the Minister of the Environment. I believe the Minister of the Environment may need to probably read just a little bit more on things that pertain to that, because, you know, I can't go build a nuclear plant on my my land in Maran and St. John, or on in the backyard of my mother's property in Victoria. I can't go do that. It's private property. But even if I'm going to build a house there, I have to get planning approval for it. So I thought that was.
Yeah, and speaking of planning approval, now we have a comment here. Cadella is saying that I would appreciate a follow-up with key stakeholders to include the government on this matter. Yes, Ms. Henry, and let me also make the point, Calistra, your camera is turned off there, but let me also make the point that we had the Chief Technical Officer from the Ministry of Infrastructure on this. I know that, Calistra, you've interviewed the Prime Minister on this. You also visited the physical planning unit. Well, it's now called the Planning and Development
Authority.
Yes, right? You know, and so you were able to corroborate, in essence, that these people have absolutely no approval to do what they're doing. So let's start with the physical planning, the Planning and Development Authority. What did you find out there? And what is physical planning saying about their inability to enforce best practices here? And then the second part would be what the Prime Minister said about this. Yes.
Well, the Prime Minister, when I asked him about because there are three issues. There's the cement batching plant and the stone quarry at Woodford. Then there is a road that's being constructed from the main road down to Halifax Bay. It is believed that Rayneau, while planning, has said to me that they do not have information that will confirm whether or not an aggregates port is being put in Halifax Bay, but this is the word on the ground. This is a word that's what they're doing, and they've done that in other jurisdictions. Build an aggregates port to facilitate their shipping in and out of the aggregates. I mean, that's the business they're in. And then there's the asphalt plant at Bushejou on government property, where they were allowed to erect an asphalt plant there, which is a concerning development for the people of the community, because there was no consultation, and certainly no study was done in terms of the wind direction and that sort of thing to determine who would be affected by what is being released, the emissions from this asphalt plant. So there are three areas of violation, and none of them, they're not in compliance with any of them with the Planning and Development Authority. Now, when they were served in June of 2024 for the batching plant, they had 28 days to take action to either stop the project and comply with what the Act requires, which is the necessary studies and submission of drawings and reports and so on the activity that's going to be there and the impact. And so they did not do that. 6 months later, all they presented 6 months later, and that's about 5.5 months after that 28-day period had expired, were drawings for the batching plant, which I also saw at planning. So that is there. They've submitted that, and but there seems to be a dragging of feet with the planning authority, and it has come into stark relief when we see what happened on Grandad's speech a few days ago. And this is by no means defending the small man or defending what was going on Grandad's speech. The regulations say you can't erect a concrete structure on Grandad's speech. That's what it says. And whether it is a CBI citizen or a Grenadian, if it's, we need to follow these regulations if we're running a proper country. And the gentleman on Grandad's speech, Kellon, he was served on December 31st. And a few days ago, which would be about a month and a half later, or 6 weeks later, they moved to demolish him. Now, the Act allows the Planning and Development Authority to do that. What is different in the handling of Rayneau is that no action was taken. You can either demolish if the offender does not follow the rest of the processes. Once you get to enforcement, there's some processes to follow. And if you're still in violation, you can demolish or you can take the matter to court. None of that was done with Rayneau. In fact, Rayneau was given more time to complete what they were doing. And they are in the process of doing that. I mean, I have footage of them working up there like 2 days ago. So no court action, no demolition, not even a second enforcement notice, nothing at all. They're simply just sitting and planning, waiting for Rayneau to submit a scope document. And you would think that a scope document would be easy to present since the project is almost completed. They must have an idea of what they're planning to do there, and to have submitted the scope document. But that's November, December, January. It's like 3 months, and the scope document is still not presented, and that poses, that poses a real problem, because you have historical sites in the area as well, where Rayneau is building, cutting the road, which they were served an enforcement notice just this week, I think maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. They were served a second enforcement notice by planning to stop the construction of this road, because they have no permission to build a road there, and to comply, to submit drawings and then environmental impact assessment, and so with the view to getting or not getting planning permission to do this. Because that's what happens. You submit your drawings, you submit your studies, and then planning decides, no, this can happen, no, this cannot happen, or yes, this can happen. The thing with Rayneau is that what they're doing is so advanced. The road is complete. I was there. The road is finished. They've cut the road down to the bay, and the only thing that planning can now stop, if Rayneau is doing it, would be dredging to put a harbor, an aggregate port down at Halifax Bay, and that's close to in the region of Perseverance, people to get an idea of what I'm talking about. So planning seems to be unable to enforce fully against Rayneau, because when you listen to the comments that the Prime Minister made, it's obvious that Rayneau enjoys some measure of grace by this administration. There are a lot of comments about local contractors, and they need to get their act together, and they need to do better. You talked about cost overruns with the Marlinair project. Other local contractors who may have cost overruns or delays, and so not being given that same kind of grace, even with cost overruns, and having to redo the asphalt at Marlinair a second time. After that road was done, they had to redo the asphalt. There were problems there that Rayneau admitted was because of their construction. It was their fault, and the asphalt had to be redone. So we have all of that, but they then get a $40 million contract to build a school in St. David. And when we talk about children and schools, and so that raises another concern, because if you go back in Rayneau's history, you would learn that in St. Lucia, there was an explosion on one of Rayneau's sites. So that safety might be an issue. It was actually investigated by the AFT, the Alcohol and Firearms and Tobacco Bureau of the United States, which you would be familiar with, Kellogg. And what was happening there, someone died, a relative of Rayneau died, and people were injured, and they lost their license to use explosives for some time. I'm not sure if they ever got it back, but they did lose it at some point. Someone was welding a shipping container filled with dynamite. Now, that speaks of lax safety procedures as well. So, I think people are well within their rights to be concerned about Rayneau's operations in Grenada, given their history in the rest of the Caribbean, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent. They have faced protests from citizens, and they've offended citizens down the chain. And so the citizens, the residents of Woodford are not wrong. And, you know, most importantly, no one spoke to them. No one spoke to the farmers. No one spoke to the people who were living there. There's one woman who had to decide not to do construction anymore on her land because she's in boundary with Rayneau. So basically her balcony is going to be either looking out at Rayneau's aggregate port on the other side of the road or at the cement batching plant. So she can't build a home there anymore. The noise is going to be crazy. The dust is going to be crazy. And there are people who, you know, there's one woman who lived there for 30-something years, about 30 years. I remember going on a field trip to that house when I was in college. She was my teacher, my English teacher. And so there are real people behind this, and the failure to consult is quite problematic, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to Cadella's point again about whether, you know, that the physical planning authority should step up. Cadella, I think that's a very important point. So in speaking of stepping up, let us talk about who the current board members are. And of course, when the Planning and Development Authority announced the new board of directors, this is what they said in the press release in part, quote, other areas that will be monitored closely by the authority will be zoning and land use, licensing and registration, identifying and appropriately dealing with false declarations of projects submitted for approval to the PDA, and ensuring that environmental impact assessment guidelines are followed. And who are the board members? Kenrick Fullerton, chairman, Kenny John, deputy chairman, Marlon Joseph, Philip Alexander, Lennox Archibald, Lakpa Joseph, I believe, or Lachaba Joseph, I'm probably mispronouncing this name, Christopher Wint, Kevin Blash, who incidentally was on the Bubb Report a couple of weeks ago, and really did not say much in respect of planning, the Planning and Development Authority's role in all of this, as well as Mr. Christopher Husbands. So that is the current board, and of course, one may say that the buck would have to stop with the board of directors in this matter. So, Calistra, we do have to get to the next segment. Where do we go from here? What other leads are you following in this story? Have you been able to reach out to Rayneau? We attempted to reach out to the CEO of Rayneau Construction through a third party, and he indicated that he will not be speaking with us. So we always make a good faith effort to speak to the other side, but we did not get that. So, Calistra, any final thoughts as we get to the next segment?
Well, I too am trying, because of course hearing from them would be important, but certainly the key point here, you know, I'm not really sure what Rayneau can say in it when we look at the fact that they have not complied based on, according to the Planning and Development Authority of Grenada, Rayneau has not been granted permission for the cement batching plant. They have not been granted permission for the road construction, and they have not been granted permission for the asphalt plant at Bushishu. And you know, I'm not really sure. You know, if you speak to the Mr. Rayneau, he might say that well, we're in the process of complying, but that's about a year after.
Or maybe he would say, that he has, maybe he would say that he has the blessing of the Minister of Infrastructure and Prime Minister of Grenada as well.
But that's not how it works either. You know, really, that's not how it works. The Prime Minister cannot, absolutely cannot give permission. There's an act that governs this thing. The law is passed in the Parliament, which the Prime Minister sits in. He cannot, you know, I want to build a nuclear plant in my backyard. I better go talk to him and get permission to do that.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Kellan. And if you guys want to, your viewers, if you want to see the full story, the first story that I published on this, because it's an ongoing and developing story, and there's more to come, you can look in the last edition, the previous edition of the New Today newspaper, not this Friday gone, but the Friday before.
The following
and of
Friday.
course, look out from the beginning of March for my continued coverage of this matter, more interviews and in-depth research on this matter with Rayneau, as well as a number of other environmentally dangerous and problematic projects that, because Raynau's not the only one, Keller, and you know that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Calistra. And as we get go to the next segment, I just want to remind our viewers and listeners of this, that Grenada is one of the few Caribbean countries that has not yet ratified the Escazú Agreement. The Escazú Agreement is a human rights treaty that protects environmental defenders and promotes environmental and human rights. Why is the Escazú Treaty important? It is the first agreement in the world to establish specific protections for environmental defenders. It is especially important for the Caribbean, where the economy and livelihoods depend on natural resources. Okay, so although we have signed on to the agreement, I don't think it's been ratified. So we sign on to these agreements, but we tend not to follow them, and I wonder what is the point of saying that we are all about sustainability and being climate smart, and all about how the developing world is destroying us in respect of the carbon footprint, but yet we turn around and we do the same thing in our backyard. So the question is, are we just performative in respect of our climate declarations? Is it all performative? That is a thought that I want to leave with us. Viewers and listeners, please stand by as we take a quick break and come back for the final segment of the day.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Unauthorized recording of my personal, not government, my personal cell phone screen by a stranger in this house. Every time I open my phone now, I have to turn back to look at the strangers. And I'm aware of who the strangers were in the house at the time. I will not rest, Mr. Speaker, until justice is served.
No, you said, Mr. Speaker, given 2 on each side, and so on the particular subject matter. Because
No.
The person on the government side.
No.
Honorable.
Honorable.
Hold on, Mr. Speaker. Let me just explain.
And so this must not be trivialized. It must not be watered down in a way that we are sending the message because it's members of the New National Party opposition. It must not be given the same attention as if it was a member on the other side.
Let me state for the record, and I can say so confidently, that myself and members of the House do not, in any way, shape, or form, support this particular deed that was done.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to the final segment of the Bubb Report. Now, opposition St. Andrew Northeast Member of Parliament Kate Lewis Peters demanded the Speaker of the House investigate the circumstances that led to the unauthorized publication of a video purporting to show the Member of Parliament engaging in the personal use of her cell phone for non-parliamentary business. The video taken during the January 28, 2025 sitting of the House of Representatives has drawn mixed reactions in the national community and has caused some to argue that while it may chalk up to a breach of privacy, the breach occurred in Parliament, where the rules of privacy may not be as sacred, whereas others have argued that this breach of privacy is in direct contravention with parliamentary protocol and the Speaker's inability to control the public's use of digital devices in the course of parliamentary business. Now, here to make sense of this issue are former Senate President Chester Humphrey, as well as Mr. Vincent Roberts, who is here in his personal capacity. I might add, he's a telecommunications expert. And of course, Mr. Diali is here for a totally different reason, but we want to get to Mr. Diali first. And I would invite both Mr. Roberts and Mr. Humphrey to chime in on this. And that has to do with the passing of a Grenadian patriot, an entrepreneur, a public servant, a politician who really served this country to the best of his ability. So we want to begin this first round of questioning by remembering the late Lyden Ramdani. So, Mr. Diali, I would start with you, sir.
Good morning, Karen. Good morning to your guests, and thank you for having me for this segment. Yes, I want to pay condolences to the Ramdani family in general on the passing of Lyden, and in particular to talk a little about Lyden. Chester and probably is of more vintage age to give more details on Lyden, but from my interaction with Lyden over the years before he passed, he was certainly a statesman, served at all levels when it came to Grenada, a politician, as you indicated earlier, entrepreneur, businessman, and of course, family man. And all of us have our strengths and our weaknesses, but Lyden brought to the fore his care for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and never at any time in my understanding and in my interaction with him failed to help where he could his country and his fellow man. So, for example, my personal experience with him when I served in various capacities in Grenada in leadership roles, he would always find time to come and sit with me and have counsel and advise on areas where he thought I could have stated things differently or give a different opinion for consideration, which I thoroughly appreciated. And that was the kind of person he was. He always cared and cared for his country foremost, and of course his family and his business. As a businessman, he was very astute, keeping Ramdanis alive over the many decades that he was there is not an easy feat in all the different economic challenges Grenada have had. And this is a company that have withstood the test of time. It's testament to him and his family and the way in which they managed their business throughout and helped the average man in Grenada based on the type of business that Ramdani's was involved in. So kudos go to him and his family. As I said, it is a tragic loss. We have in recent time lost him, Michael McIntyre and Royston Hopkins, that's right. And these three gentlemen were one of with Richard Strachan had started the airlift committee many years ago, and it just shows the strategic thinking and forward thinking, because that airlift committee has significantly impacted tourism in Grenada. And Lyden brought an international and regional flavor to us in Grenada in business, and was a guy that always had and interacted with businesses at various levels in the region and internationally, and brought their expertise and his expertise to us in Grenada when it related to investors that came to our country. So Kellen, I want to put on record my deepest condolences to him and his family, and of course, the loss we would have suffered in Grenada with him passing, and these other gentlemen in business and entrepreneurs like Michael McIntyre and Royston Hopkins. So, I hope that gives us some sort of thought of the way we must function as we all strive to live and make Grenada a better place to be.
Absolutely. I always call former senator senator. I think it should be
That's fine.
senators for life.
My
I
former
do that.
president is right there with you as well.
Your former president is right there. Mr. Humphrey, I want you to add to what Mr. Diali shared here. Of course, you knew Mr. Ramdani in a different capacity. We'll be having a much more full-throated segment with the Honorable Peter David, who also worked with Mr. Ramdani during the revolution. But talk to us about your relationship with him during that era, sir, Mr. Humphrey.
Well, first of all, Dr. Bubb, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to the public through your platform and, of course, platform which goes regional and international. Let me begin by saying that in this month, Grenada has unfortunately lost two stalwarts. The most recent is Leiden, and I don't think that Mr. Ramdani will take any objection to me calling him Leiden. I'll talk about him a minute. But secondly, another stalwart, Grenadian, coming from a different angle in the economy, is the late Robbie Robinson, who has been a trade unionist for all of his life. He was an outstanding public servant. He represented the labor movement well. He was the president of the Public Workers Union. He worked in labor relations in the early days of the industrial court in Trinidad and Tobago. He came here, he led the trade union movement here through the Public Workers Union in its most formidable days. After that, he went on to become a labor commissioner. And when he eventually retired from the service, he became the lone labor consultant, putting his expertise at the disposal of anyone who needed it, but particularly the business community. He had always been a very fair individual in his practice of industrial relations and so on, and a very respected individual. Now to my dear friend Leiden, who shared the same classroom with me at the GBSS way back when, I think it might have been in the late 60s. The late 60s. Leiden and I were at the GBSS. We became very good friends, and we became comrades, notwithstanding the fact that he was a Grenada businessman. And it's a point I want to make when the references are made to both Michael McIntyre and Royston Hopkins, because all of these gentlemen in the business field are genuine patriotic Grenadians. They are of Grenadian stock, and we are made up of different racial complexities. But at the end of the day, these are Grenadians, and they have been successful in business in a world dominated by international monopoly capital. And they have made Grenada proud. They've carved out a niche in the national economy as Black people. Yes, Leiden's four parents came here as indentured servants, a form of semi-slavery, and rose from that to become a respected family business in the country. Leiden was a complex individual, because one would ask, what does a leading businessman from a leading business family have to do with a revolutionary government? He was the right arm of Bernard in financial matters. He ran his business. He was very close to Cuba, very sympathetic to the Cuban cause, very sympathetic to the cause of working people, while at the same time being a businessman. It's a kind of contradiction that is almost impossible to overcome. But Leiden, as a person, was able to do it. I have never met a gentleman meeker, other than Chetty Jagan, that has had this meek personality. Leiden was never known to anger. You never knew that he was angry. You never knew that he was boiling up on any issue. He had and he kept that characteristic when I first met him in the GDSS in those Often, years, we became both personal friends and a source of intellectual exchange. He was a very well informed individual. And may I say, he broke a lot of the traditions from the socio-economic strata from which he came. But his family background arose out of the indentureship. And people would tell you that Father Ramdani, that's Amnaiden's father, was the kind of well, eventually owned estates, but he was a significant player in the nutmeg industry. And they would tell you that he was almost like a missionary, the way in which he dealt with black working class agro-proletarians, the way his business ran, somewhat just like L.A. Purcell. But these are businessmen who arose in a period where institutional racism was still very much alive. And they were able to tread that social needle in such a way as to express a patriotism that involved all of the classes and strata of Grenada. And so it's a great loss. Our country has lost a great mind, right? Leiden may not have had all of the academic certification, but he had a depth of mind that Bernard Cord recognized and that Bernard Cord, with all his brilliance, relied on. And everything that has been said about Leiden, his contribution to nation building, his contribution to fashioning what I would be described as the Grenadian persona, because he personified the Grenada persona. Very quiet, very collected, very calm, very measured. I mean, I can't find enough adjectives. And I'm deeply, while I'm not religious, I am emotionally very distraught because I spoke to him recently. I spoke to him last month and the month before, and we spoke about some personal matters related to his health and so on. And again, his number one concern was what is going to happen to Grenada, what path is Grenada going to take, and discussing the implications of the new situation that has arisen in the United States and the reformulation of international diplomatic norms. How would that affect the Grenadian economy? The high youth unemployment. I mean, this was a guy with a lot of stuff, lot of very deep intellectual stuff that he was made of. So I'll use the opportunity, like my dear friend Chris has, to convey my deepest condolences to the family. And I hope that they will find the necessary strength in the fact that Leiden was a brilliant Grenadian who has left his mark, an indelible mark on the personality craft of the nation. And the fact the family successes is something that all of Grenada should celebrate. I salute his memory, I salute his work, and I thank him for the contributions that he has made.
Mr. Humphrey, thank you so much. And I'm sure Mr. Roberts, Mr. Vincent Roberts, I'm sure you would join in that chorus. I suspect you probably knew Mr. Ramdani as well.
Yes, thank you very much. I knew Leiden more from a personal and family setting. And I will say that his demeanor, his calm and rational thinking is reflective of the family that he comes from. The entire family are known to be very calm. They do not get flustered quite easily, very rational in their thinking. And it is a great loss to their family, I'm quite sure, and to the people of Grenada. And I extend my condolences to the family and to the nation.
Gentlemen, thank you so much again. And what we want to do now is to pause for a moment of silence in honor of Mr. Ramdani as well as Mr. Robinson, who also passed recently. May they rest in peace, and may their memories be a blessing. Christopher Diali, thank you so much for joining us for the opening part of this segment. So we're going to now move on. Yes, we're now going to move on, folks, to the business of the day in respect of the data breach, the allegations of a data breach that occurred in the Parliament of Grenada. And Ms. Humphrey, I do want to begin with you, sir, because of course you have the institutional knowledge of Parliament. And let us begin by talking about sort of the evolution of Parliament from an analog to a digital footing. Now, in my day, when cell phones were not even a thing in Grenada, when I covered Parliament at York House, the Sergeant of Arms at the time, he ran a very tight ship in the public gallery. He did not tolerate interruptions, and anytime folks spoke out of turn, he got up very sternly and he said silent. In fact, I saw him on several occasions escorting people outside of Parliament from the public gallery. So let us talk about this, how the standing orders evolved from the York House days to now, taking into account that digital evolution that Parliament has to consider as well.
All right. First, Dr. Bubb, let me just make a generalized point.
Yes.
As the contextual background for the issue which arose recently. First and foremost, the rapidity with which technology is evolving and developing finds us, not just the question of Parliament, but society as a whole, lagging behind in respect of laws and regulations as to how this technology should be controlled and limited. And generally, and this is not a Grenada problem, it's a world problem. Generally, the laws tend to lag behind the evolving technology. And in respect of Parliament, which is a very traditional structure and holds fast to tradition, all parliaments, be it the parliaments of the the House of Representatives and Senate of the American Republic or the Canadian Parliament, Parliament is generally maintains a body and atmosphere of tradition, all right, and it is slow to change. Under my stewardship, that change, and the change is still slow and evolving and is necessary. For example, we made one amendment in both houses in order, and former Senator Diali would recall that because he and I were very intricately involved in that bill in the House of the Senate, even more than the House of Representatives. We were the ones who were calling for the introduction of a digital platform in the Senate. Parliament deals with a voluminous amount of paper, with bills and regulations and reports and all of that stuff. And it was becoming burdensome to get around. So you had to have a dedicated police officer outrider on a motorcycle, and he would come to your house on a Sunday, a Saturday, whatever time, to deliver this huge brown envelope packets with all kinds of documents and bills and so on.
I remember getting those at the Grenadian Voice. Yes, go ahead.
Right, and then there were sections that will be dropped off to the media and that kind of thing, all done by a police outrider on a motorcycle. And we pressed on, and eventually we introduced a change in the standing orders, which allow for parliamentary documents to be circulated in addition to the traditional way, digitally. Right? Under those provisions and within that time frame, a upgrade of how Parliament does its business was introduced, and as a result, every member of Parliament was provided with a laptop. So, as an extension of the digitalization, laptops were then provided, not personal laptops. The laptop was an instrument dedicated to each member had a laptop that was numbered. It was not his personal laptop, but he had charge of it very much in the same way as you had charge of your passport. It's not your personal document. It's a document of the state which you can use to travel. Well, somewhat in that form, but of course, as not as wide as it is. So each member in the parliament, in both houses, would have a laptop. The laptop is available for sessions, whether it's a full sitting of the house or some committee, and the laptop would be there. You can get online, and the bills are there electronically, and so on. All right. So just let me say, the standing orders are very, in a word, archaic, and that is not to cast any aspersion or make any condemnation. It's just the way and nature of how things are done in Parliament. But to any reasonable mind, certainly to my mind, first of all, a stranger in the gallery is there at the pleasure of the presiding officer. All strangers, right? So while Parliament is public, and remember, it's only of recent vintage, we start to get parliamentary procedures now being televised and so
live
on, and now it's
streamed.
gone
Yeah.
online and so on. So I'm telling but that has been a very slow process, but we are occurring there. What is lagging behind are certain rules and regulations. But let's be clear. The presence of Parliament are sacred. The presiding officer has, by virtue of the Constitution, a lot of powers. Parliament itself has a lot of powers. And I have seen some arguments between lawyers as to whether or not what, to my mind, amounts to spying on a member of Parliament. I want to put it bluntly. I'm not sugarcoating it. If you are extended the privilege as a journalist, whether you're a photojournalist, whether you are a print journalist, or whether you are a visual journalist, but someone who comes in there to take footage to cover a parliamentary story. And that certainly would be the mens rea of a presiding officer who, because you can't just walk off the street and come into Parliament with a camera and start filming. You have to get the permission of the Speaker. And you have to be a registered media person. There's a register of media persons, and every new session of Parliament, right? Not sitting, but every new Parliament, those applications are renewed. And unless there's something untoward where a speaker might feel a particular media person may have gone out of line, you're automatically granted. But I have had cause to restrict certain media people during my tenure in Parliament, and I've spent close to 30 years in the Parliament. I believe myself and Dr. Mitchell are the longest serving parliamentarians alive in this country today. And I've gone through different speakers, I've gone through different periods and different eras. Now, a search of the House of Representatives standing orders would not see anything specific to what I would call a visual journalist. But certainly a visual journalist who would have entered the Parliament on the privilege extended him by the Speaker will never, to my mind, allow such a person to spy. And that is what occurred. There was a spying, and that's absolutely wrong, intolerable, and should be rejected by all right-thinking persons. No, I've heard the argument that a guy burgled my house, right? While I was not there. He committed a burglary. And while he came in searching and stealing things, he discovered a firearm, which subsequently became known as an illegal firearm. Is there an argument that the burglar didn't commit a burglarious act? Because I've heard those stretched arguments in the legal context, right? And all of them tend to be politically favored. And I suspect the persons who sought or gave that opinion would be those who are sympathetic maybe to the government side. And those who on the other side will have an opposing view. But ask yourself for a moment, if that spying occurred in this parliament and the spying was done on the prime minister, it is absolutely unacceptable conduct. And the least that the speaker can do is to trigger an inquiry. And I may dare say, the speaker can extend a ban. Notwithstanding, it's not in the standing orders. The speaker can extend a ban because the Constitution allows the Parliament to construct its own rules. Remember the separation of powers. We are all co-equal arms. And Parliament as a legislative arm, the Speaker is the person in charge. And when I go to the standing orders, let me read for you standing orders on page 4. It is standing order 5, subsections 4, 5, and 6. I want to read to you in its entirety what it says, because the Speaker has the powers. And I do believe, although I don't know the Speaker personally, but I cannot see a Speaker in granting permission for a visual journalist, as I described one, to enter the Parliament for the purpose of spying. Because that is what it amounted to. I'm not interested in what was on the parliamentarian cell phone. That's a different issue. But the cell phone is a private personal instrument, right? And there is protection of privacy. I can't just steal your cell phone and go into it. That's the criminal law deals with that. I can't intercept a cell phone message. Criminal law deals with that. It's an offense, from what I've been told by lawyers. It's an offense in law. And therefore, to use a camera to spy on a member of parliament, well, the prime minister himself made it clear. He separated himself and he separated his government, right? So at least at a modicum, while the act was not an act personally injurious to the government side, the prime minister, who is an outstanding attorney, a business attorney, but attorney nonetheless, right, has made it clear that he does not accept that kind of behavior. The leader of the opposition now, the Honorable Emlyn Pear, well, she's not yet leader, but is on her way there. The
The
statements
leader
that
of
she
the
made
opposition elect, yes.
to be elect.
Yes,
Well,
yeah.
elect, yes. Although it's not really
Semantics.
an election,
Semantics.
it's based on
Yes.
the perception of the Governor General.
Yes.
Who the Governor General perceives will enjoy the majority support amongst members who are not on the government side.
Yes.
But so for all purposes, this.
You're about to
Let me
quote the
just read
standing
you the
orders, and then
standing
we'll get
orders.
Mr. Roberts.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, sections 4, 5, and 6. 4. The Speaker in the House and the Chairman in committee shall have power to regulate the conduct of business in all matters not provided for in these standing orders. And it must be inappropriate for a stranger to be spying on a member of parliament and having spied to publish what he has stolen. That must be improper. And all this talk about parliament being a private place is just utter rubbish. Subsection 5. The Speaker shall be responsible for the management and general administration of the House. And if he has that responsibility, and I'm saying to you, I'm saying, notice the stance of the Prime Minister on the opposite side. Notice the position of the member of the NNP, Honorable Emlyn Pear, when she spoke, and she spoke with passion, and she is absolutely correct. And Section 6 says, the decision in all cases for which the standing orders do not provide shall be within the discretion of the Speaker, and the Speaker shall not be open to challenge. The Speaker can effect a ban, because I submit, I'll be shocked if when the Speaker gave permission for a visual journalist to enter the Parliament, he was doing so on understanding that he was facilitating spying. I will have a heart attack if that emerges. I don't believe it will emerge, because I don't think in my wildest imagination that the speaker had any such intent. The speaker intention is the intention of all the presiding officers I know and of myself, that Parliament conducts the
Yes.
business of the people and that the people should have some knowledge of what's happening.
Yeah.
That does not extend to entering into a private instrument of the individual.
Yes.
Does not.
Yes, Mr.
All
Humphrey.
right? And any arguments, so let's be clear. My position is simple.
Yes.
Sorry.
Stick a pin. I want to get to Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, of course, this is your very first time on the Bubb Report. I've had both of your other siblings on the Bubb Report, so welcome to the program. I don't know if you watch the program or not, but it's a pleasure having you here, and we're glad to have you. We hope to have you back again at some point.
Right. Thank you very much. And it is indeed a privilege to be on such esteemed and highly regarded program.
Yes.
Dr. Bubb, the subject matter that we're looking at today deals with a specific case of recording someone's, people say, data. Now, I will look, and I've been looking at the whole issue from the point of view of data protection and how data is handled. Now, the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union is considered to be the gold standard, and throughout the world, it is used to develop all local laws regarding to data protection. Now, the GDPR, as it is called, specifically looked at three things. One, personal data. Two, the processing of data. And three, what is called data controllers. Now, one may ask, what is the relevance to this case? First of all, what is personal data? Personal data is any data which can be used to identify a natural person, and in data law, they are referred to as the data subject. So we ask, was the information on the phone personal data? It was not. Two, processing includes collecting, recording, storage, and dissemination of data. Was data circulated? Yes. The information was recorded, but I go back to one, it was not personal data. Three, data collectors and processors, they are responsible for the handling of data and how it is handled and whether it complies with the GDPR principles. As I said, in this case, showing MP's Kate Lewis phone activity, it does not qualify as personal data. And two, it merely shows her browsing a website without identifying any private details, like her credit card information and so on. The setting where this is done is a public parliamentary session. And I will not challenge Senator Humphrey's comments on that, bearing in mind, one, not just because he has been there for many years, but because along the many years, he has developed an expertise and he de facto is an authority in that field. So I will not be speaking on what he has said. However, if we should look at how the data was handled and all of that, it brings to the fore the question, was there a reasonable expectation of privacy? And there we go into another area which is linked with data protection and where the data comes from. under the expectation of privacy in data law, it asks the question, one, is it the expectation of the person that in that situation they would have what they call a normal expectation of privacy? This is a subjective expectation of privacy we're talking about. The second one is the objective or reasonable expectation of privacy. Would a reasonable person in the same situation expect privacy? Now, for an expectation of privacy to be legally valid, it must pass both the objective and the subjective test. And in this situation, it begs the question, would a normal person expect privacy in that setting? And we bring in where Senator Humphrey says that, you know, in Parliament, the presiding officer, president or speaker, is the one who would rule on these issues. Now, in preparing for this, I looked at the standing orders. And as the senator says, it says that the members can use their device to present and so on. But it does not really address the issue, not of the journalists or the member, but what about the visitors who are referred to, I think the senator said, as strangers? What happens if a visitor comes in with their device? And we know now that most devices have multiple capabilities. You can use it to make your notes if you're interested in something. You can use it to research while a presentation is being made. You can use it to photograph. Are the members of the parliament expecting privacy when all of this is happening? So not looking at it from a political point of view, but looking at it from a data processing and the general data protection regulation, which, although it comes from the EU, it is applicable in all countries, as long as you're dealing with European citizens. Whether the members of parliament expect privacy in that setting.
Senator, I want you to pick up on what Mr. Roberts articulated here. He said in the context of Parliament, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. But in my understanding of Parliament, there is also something called parliamentary privilege. So there are things that members of Parliament can do inside of the House that if they were to do it outside of the House, there would be consequences for that. So please pick up on what he just articulated here.
Look, in the last few minutes, I've been listening to what I describe as pure obfuscation. I'm getting around the issue in order to make a political point of correctness. All right? And I don't have much appetite for harboring those nefarious intentions. We don't have sight of the European law, which was spoken of. We don't know the context of those laws. We don't know what the law says. What we have is an individual presentation and the interpretation of the law. And the issue goes before what is being published. Saying to you, I am certain, right? And maybe you in the media can ask the speaker, but I'm certain when the speaker gave permission for a visual journalist to enter the chamber to cover the parliament, the speaker could not have had in mind that he was allowing one to spy.
Well,
right?
Senator, I don't want to cut you off.
Let me start. Well, let me.
Yeah, because there are also there are allegations that this might not have been a visual journalist. This might have been just somebody in the gallery with a cell phone. I could go in Parliament gallery and sit down and start recording with my cell phone.
I was in Parliament during the debate, and I saw a gentleman with a very powerful lens camera. And it's one of those standard sized cameras, but it can also do videos. I saw him moving around the parliament. And I just assumed that he would have had permission because the clerk and the support, the orderly, the sergeant of arms and others would have stopped him because you're not allowed That is just not allowed in the parliament,
Yeah.
especially in a non-ceremonial occasion. If you had a ceremonial occasion, there's usually a photo opportunity time, right? But as I said, the very fact, remember, a cell phone is a private instrument unless that cell phone was issued to you by the state. And when I was speaker, after many, many years, in the latter part of my speakership, I was provided with a phone by the government as speaker. Now, that's not a private phone. That's a government phone. But even there, the issue of privacy must apply. So it is not what the fellow discovered. The fact is, he entered the member of parliament's phone without her permission or knowledge, harvested information. And I'm not going to spend time to define whether that is data and what data means and so on. That's obfuscation. The fact is, and everybody knows, simply, the population knows, simply put, that what occurred, and as I'm saying, in the public domain, it depends on which side of the political fence you are at. So in the public domain, if you are on the government side, then the guy did nothing wrong, and I hear when they were shopping, this is a public space, that kind of argument. On the other side, and I'm saying the fact that the prime minister, the leader of the government, stood up and made it clear that he, first of all, as prime minister, minister of national security, the one overall in charge of the entire administration of the state, in the executive arm of business, that he and his party disassociate themselves from that act. So, I mean, that says it all. And the point I'm making here is what now has to happen, to my mind, is that the speaker, at a minimum, must commission an inquiry to determine who was most likely to have harvested this information and then to take the appropriate action. If I was currently the presiding officer, I would immediately suspend all from the House until that investigation occurs. And I would then set strict rules for the speaker. And the Constitution lays it out. The Constitution in section 50 says, and I read, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, each House of Parliament may regulate its own procedure and may in particular make rules for the orderly conduct of its proceedings. Right? And then it goes on to 3. Parliament may, for the purpose of the orderly and effective discharge of the business of the Senate and the House of Representatives, makes provisions for the powers, privileges, and immunities of the houses and the committees and the members thereof. And I read you earlier the powers that the presiding officer has in this particular case in the House of Representatives. Right? What occurred was unfortunate, incorrect, a gross abuse of an extended privilege, right? And it is sufficient for the speaker. I will impose a lifetime ban. If I was a speaker there and there's a sufficient evidence to satisfy my mind of the individual who did this, he would have a lifetime ban on Parliament. And it would matter not to me whether or not the acts were done against the then ruling party, the NNP, or the current ruling party, the NDC. It matters not, because the integrity of the Parliament, which must be reflected through the conduct of the Speaker, is at stake. Right? So I think the least that the Speaker can do in order to preserve his own integrity is to commission immediately an inquiry, which must report to him, the Speaker. Right? And it must involve the police. That inquiry must involve the police, because from the information I have from other legal sources, there seem to be a criminal breach. No, law is not exact until appeal courts say it is. So you will find on any matter as many opinions as their opinions oppose. Until a final court says, this is it, then this is it. And in recent times, the American Supreme Court has taught us that there's no finality in law, because they are reversing all the issues which we thought was settled law and all the abortion issues and things.
Understand decisis and whatnot. Yes, but
right.
yeah.
So I just make this point. What happened is indefensible, and I've not heard any argument that satisfies me. All right?
Now,
And certainly there has been no argument that satisfied the Prime Minister. I don't know if he have a second wind of it. And when the Honorable Evelyn Pearce spoke, she was, in my mind, absolutely correct. And I believe an inquiry should be on the way immediately.
Mr. Roberts, this is what you said in an opinion piece that you penned on this. You said the call, and I'm quoting you now, quote, "The call for a ban is disproportionate unless a clear rule was violated and a severe security breach occurred." And then you go on to say Speaker's role, quote, "The Speaker has the authority to determine whether an investigation is warranted, but should focus on whether there was an improper breach of parliamentary decorum rather than an alleged privacy violation," unquote. Mr. Roberts, I want you to pick up on both points that you made there.
Well, very simple, that the Speaker is the person in charge. And if he wants to, it is up to him. The Speaker, based on the standing orders, is the one to determine one way or the other if there should be an investigation. But Dr. Bubb, I want to go back and address something here. The General Data Protection Regulation has influenced privacy and data protection worldwide. And even if someone is unfamiliar with it, that does not mean it is any less applicable or any less relevant. Not knowing about it has nothing to do with the horse's flesh. The point is that today, globally, the General Data Protection Regulation is the standard used. So when one says that I don't know about it and it is obfuscation and all of that, that is irrelevant. The issue is that everything now, all data and how it is handled, is looked at through the lens of the General Data Protection Regulation. And anyone saying they're not familiar with it, sorry, you're behind time. Because we even have a General Data Protection Regulation in Grenada based on the EU gold standard. So anything, this whole issue, Parliament could say what they want. The presiding officer in either of the houses can make their decision and make their rules. It will be, in my opinion, beyond whatever it is to ban this person, even for a period. First of all, you have to find out what the whole issue of the expectation of privacy. How can you be sitting in the public, the people's public parliament? It is being televised. Everything that you're saying, as the senator said, you're issued with a government device. You're using your personal device, and the information is not even personal data. So what is the issue? If the information showed the credit card details, the health status, and so on, of course, that would be a breach.
Well, you know, and you're speaking of the use of personal data. Again, information has come to us that this practice of using personal devices on Parliament's time is universal. It's not only, it does not only happen in the context of what that opposition member was caught doing at the time, but my understanding is that they are members of Parliament, and I'm not going to, again, you know, implicate, again, as a journalist, I hold confidentiality to the highest esteem here, but there are allegations that others have been watching movies and doing other things while in Parliament as well, on the other side. So,
yeah, Dr. Bubb, if I may just intervene on that.
yes, Mr.
If I should
Humphrey,
intervene on that point,
yes.
I mean, I don't buy the argument that two wrongs make a right. Two wrongs
And I'm
just
not saying
equal
that
to two
either.
wrongs.
Yes.
No, but you seem to be suggesting that others are doing it. And I'm making, for example, I would openly admit that during my years as sitting in Parliament, there are times when I have immediately on leaving Parliament to go to sign a collective agreement. And the collective agreement is being prepared by the office. They email it to me. And while in parliamentary proceedings, I'm reading my thing and following the Parliament proceedings on the phone to give my office the go-ahead to prepare the contract, to bring it up for me so I could go to the workplace to sign it. I mean, this is not directly Parliament business, but the instrument is a private instrument. And to enter that instrument requires some permission. This is a private instrument. Yes, you're in a private place. Yes, you're in a public place. As I tell you, the guy who breaks my house, burgles my house and steals my firearm, can't use the fact that he found an illegal firearm as defense against burglary. This isn't a private instrument belonging to me. Whatever comes here is mine. When the speaker gave permission for that individual to come into the chamber, the speaker could not have been contemplating to allow that individual to spy. And that's the conduct I'm addressing. Spying on the members of parliament, in my view, is unacceptable conduct. And I don't care. I don't care what you manufacture to give it a face of correctness. Now we are saying we must now, the speaker must now judge whether or not the activity. If I whisper something to my parliamentary colleague on the other side, I mean, it may not necessarily be about the bill. I mean, that's incorrect. What would be incorrect? Is it the whisper disturbs the proceedings? The whisper itself is not incorrect, but it's the extent to which the behavior disturbs the proceedings. And I am saying in the parliamentary chamber, notwithstanding that Parliament is a public place, there are strict regulations. You cannot enter Parliament in a short pants. You could walk on the beach in a short pants. You cannot enter a government ministry armless and with all your visible attire exposing all your privacy. And it's a public place. You could do that on the beach. So the point I'm addressing is the fact that this individual entered without permission and knowledge in a mischievous intent and publish it, and that must be incorrect.
If that was in her veranda,
So all of this,
not in the parliament.
Mr. Roberts,
Public
really
place.
meant to divert.
Mr. Roberts,
Yeah.
Mr. Roberts, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said the parliament is a public place. Doing the same thing with the MP sitting on her veranda or sitting in a private room and you look through a window to get it, that is wrong. That is spying. But in a public place, you're walking on the street and you're using your phone and somebody see it, you're wrong. You can't expect privacy in a public place like that. In the parliament, you cannot expect the same level of privacy as in your home. Definitely not. So when you're looking at an expectation of privacy, you have to look at where it is happening. It is not the same action throughout. The location influences the expectation.
Very well, gentlemen, this is, again, such an important conversation. And again, I preface this by making the point that in respect of the evolution, the digital infrastructure sometimes does not evolve. The parliament, sometimes is not in lockstep with the technological and digital evolutions we have witnessed, which again, as you, I believe, Mr. Humphrey alluded to, comes really fast. But I do want to get to some viewer comments here. I believe Tessa is here. Of course, Tessa Sincere was a former senator, and I believe she sat on the Standing Orders Committee as well with Mr. Humphrey when he was the president of the Senate. So we have a question here from Jimmy Henry, who is saying, GDPR is enforced in all countries and or companies that does business or handle European citizen personal data. But again, as Cassandra said, Mr. Roberts, Cassandra Mitchell, that is, the European Union does not have jurisdiction over Grenada. So how is it that an EU regulation has international jurisdiction? Could you pick up on that?
Of course. Now, this is something that is debated throughout the technology industry. Why is the GDPR so widespread in its application? One, any company who deals with a European citizen, regardless of where you're located, they impose fines. So if it happens with Amazon or alphabet, or whichever one of them, the EU has the capacity to find you where you are and impose fines for breaching the citizens' data. Very often, you don't know who are their citizens. So to avoid costly fees, you apply it to all citizens in all countries. The GDPR is called the gold standard. It is what all countries model their data protection regulations on. Does that address it?
Yes. Thanks for clearing that up. Thanks for clearing that up. You're very concise. I like that. I like that. Another question here to you, Mr. Roberts. Would your position be the same had the PM been the victim of this type of behavior, which many see as an act of espionage? Or espionage. That's a very strong statement. Espionage.
Of course, any member of and on any side who expects privacy in there, I'm sorry for them. You cannot expect privacy sitting in the parliamentary chamber. Look at the design. People sitting behind and they're reading a screen. I have brought it to the attention of others. I've taken photographs of the screen and say, hey, you either get a screen protector or get some other means.
Wait, hold on. You said you have taken photographs of empty
I have
screen
seen
and
it
brought
and
it
I've
to their
taken it
attention?
and I've used it to indicate to the member that, look, your screen is visible. You need to protect it.
Did you say that to the opposition MPs as well?
I didn't see their screen. I spoke to the person individually involved.
I see.
That's not my function.
Okay. Let me bring back Mr. Humphrey here. Mr. Humphrey, you seem to be. We can. I'm not sure if Mr. Humphrey is not hearing us or seeing us. Of course, this is
I'm
the age of
hearing you
data.
perfectly.
Okay, very well.
What actually happened to you? I'm on your program through my phone.
I see.
And
Okay, no
apparently the
worries.
charge ran out. Yeah.
Yes, no worries,
So
gentlemen.
I'm trying to get you back on.
This is yes. So this is such an important conversation to have. But as Cadella Henry said earlier, let me see if I can pull this comment up. She's saying there is no win-win to this discussion. Investigation or not, we have a personal responsibility to ourselves to be mindful of where we operate in any particular setting. So that is her comment, and I think that's such an important context as well to have. But Mr. Roberts, I want to go over to you for some closing comments. But before I do, of course, you are on the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission that speaks to the regulation of media, telecommunications, technology, and all of that in the context of Grenada. Can you quickly educate the public? Of course, you are not here. Again, I just want to make this point that you're not here representing the NTRC today, but you're using your experience in another field to do so. But can you talk about what the NTRC does and what the public should know about your work?
Well, as you rightly said, I'm not here in my official capacity as the chairman of the NTRC. Now, the NTRC is responsible for the regulation and the monitoring, making sure citizens are protected, but just putting it in a short way, of everything in that ambit. Yeah. And I will take the opportunity quickly to say that one of our greatest concerns, and as a result, we have recently hired someone to deal with public relations. We hear a lot of people saying that the NTRC is not doing anything about the poor state of communication. But the regulation says that what the process is, you complain to your provider, who should give you a complaint number, and you should be able to follow up. And if you're dissatisfied, you report it to the NTRC. With that complaint number, we can follow up and so on. But people in Grenada, with very few exceptions, there's one specific case which has really led to a lot of new approaches. And this is a Grenadian who has been going at their provider with letters, documents, involving the NTRC, sticking to them, involving ECTEL, but few people have that stamina. few people have that stand. Most people call into the radio program and just make a state their cause, whatever it is, but they do not follow the procedure. The NTRC is there, I would say, in summary, to protect the users of the electronic communication services in Grenada.
Yes, because of course I've had many. I have issues with some of the internet service providers when I come home to Grenada, and this is not as a JCB talking, quote unquote. I don't consider myself a JCB, by the way.
We have very few companies. You could count it on one hand.
Yes, but it's just I'm speaking now of, again, the internet speed and given how much you pay for that service, it's something that I think it's. I'm glad you raised it. I'm glad you raised it. Yes, Mr. Humphrey, we're going to go over to you now, sir, for some closing comments.
Well, to get back to the core issue, which we were invited to address.
Yes.
I make the following points in summary. One, the conduct of spying on members of parliament is a conduct that should not be encouraged and should be nipped in the bud. It should not be given oxygen by introducing extraneous obfuscation in order to score a political point. I think that's a dangerous path to follow. The speaker has an easy job on this one because I said the prime minister has disassociated himself and his party from the incident and what happened. The Honorable Emlyn Pear and the victim involved both made very impassioned objections to what was happening. The ball now rests in the speaker's court. So it is the speaker at this stage to send a message to the Grenadian citizens, whether or not he is a speaker who wants to maintain a decorum of fairness. He wants to protect the integrity of the parliament and its precincts, right? And it is now in the speaker's hand, entirely in the speaker's hand. And at this point, both myself and Mr. Roberts are congruent. We agree with each other. So it is the speaker now. And I believe the speaker owes it to parliamentary tradition. And he owes it to all members of the House to immediately commission, if he has not done so, an inquiry. And because there may be criminal matters involved, to invite the police through a complaint to launch this inquiry, plus Parliament can do its own inquiry to determine who is a suspect in this matter, and one does not need a trial. Once there is significant evidence for a reasonable mind to conclude, the Speaker has the power to act, and I pointed that out to you both under the standing orders and under the Constitution. And the rules of the House in the standing orders, I do not know that they are challengeable in a court of law. I don't know. Unless those rules breach the Constitution, then a constitutional matter may arise. But there's no constitutional matter there because the person who came in as a visual editor is there at the pleasure, journalist is there at the pleasure of the Speaker. So everything now rests on the Speaker. And the Speaker has to rescue himself from this issue. He can't go to sleep on it and pretend that it never occurred and hope that it goes away. He runs the risk of a repeat of this, not necessarily the same way, but it may happen where someone in the gallery with a cell phone records something that the Prime Minister may be listening to, or his attention may be drawn to, which may not be directly related to the business of the House. Right? So that's my view. That is in the Speaker's hands. The Speakers must act, And I'm suggesting, Speaker does not have to take my suggestion, the way in which the Speaker should do so. All right? And in the meantime, all suspects, all suspects should be debarred until evidence comes in, because you can't allow a harm to continue, right? In the meantime, all suspects, and that's the reason why you have to get bail, and depending on the nature, you're innocent, but depending on the nature of the charge, you may not be given bail at all, right? The same principle here applies. You should not allow the harm to continue. So in the meantime, all must be suspended, right? And the Speaker must put rules to regulate the use of photo devices in the chamber. And as I say, I don't subscribe to this obscurantist thing about the Parliament, the public place, and privacy this and privacy that, and European standard and X, Y, and Z.
That can't be obscurantist.
Speaker has the power to act.
Can't be.
And he should do so. And that's my view. My view, the incident that occurred was unfortunate and wrong.
Yeah. Mr. Humphrey, do you have confidence in this Speaker to do what you're suggesting here, given owing to his reputation in respect of perhaps some might say his inability to maintain decorum?
Well, in the pursuit of justice, I offer him a tabula rasa.
Tabula rasa. Okay, very well.
Yes.
Okay,
so on this one,
fair enough.
this one will determine who the Speaker is. I am not prepared to make a judgment on the basis of past performance. Right? But you would notice I've invited the Speaker, if he's listening, or people who are close to him who are listening, that he can proceed. Because the government has made it clear that it wants no association with that conduct. Government has made that clear. And so it's for the Speaker now, right? And the opposition has made it clear that that conduct is unacceptable. So all sides of the House, both sides of the House have spoken. So it's up to the Speaker now to protect the integrity of the House, right? To protect the solemnity of the House, to protect the internal discipline of the House, especially among strangers, to come up with such rules and to take such actions to show that the Speaker is worthy of occupying the post as Speaker. He has all the instruments and rules at his convenience. He has the Constitution, he has the standing orders.
The standing orders. Very well.
And he has the position of both sides of the House. So the Speaker must now act. And he ought not to drag his foot on this matter. The Speaker should have acted within 24 hours of this incident becoming known and public. Had it been me, a decision would have been made long time ago.
Mr. Roberts, over to you, sir,
sir,
for some closing comments. And we do hope to have you back because, of course, we are navigating several digital minefields in this. There is so much issues around scams. I received a scam text this morning saying that I owed my tolls or something like that. And if I clicked on it, obviously I know better now around the digital literacy piece, but there is so much to navigate. So certainly we will be having you back on the program for those conversations in the future. But on this score, on parliamentary protocol, privacy, and the public interest, over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Well, I will close as agreeing with Senator Humphrey. It is up to the presiding officer. In this case, it's the lower house. If it had it been in the other house, the same thing. The presiding officer has the authority and the wherewithal to do his investigation. It must be based, though, on proper understanding of what obtains today in terms of data and how it is handled, whether it is just general information or personal data. Thank you very much. Do have a great day.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, this has been another edition of the Bubb Report. And we want to thank all of our panelists. Of course, without them, this program will not be possible. We do rely on experts with lived experience in their various fields to make this program possible. And I just want to remind all of you that we will be having a 5th anniversary event in May. The tentative date will be announced soon. The confirmed date will be announced soon. We have a tentative date, but we want to ensure that we can lock in that date for May, where the Bubb Report will be celebrating its 5th anniversary with a public event in Grenada. We promise that it will be of the same quality and standard that you've come to expect on a Sunday morning. So on behalf of the producers of the program, as always, your humble host, Dr. Bubb, and we thank you for continuing to watch the program. I do have a quick correction. Earlier in the program, I said Grenada did not ratify the Escazú Agreement. In fact, Grenada did ratify the Escazú Agreement. So I do want to make that point. Of course, folks, we're going to see you next week. I just want to remind you that the program next week will not be live. It will be pre-recorded, but we promise to bring a quality program, and you do not want to miss next week because it promises to also be a blockbuster. I'm your humble host, Dr. Bubb, and I thank everyone for watching this week's edition of the Bubb Report. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.